Stayed up through the days and night, lay and we watched the world get light. Hey, Carissa, sunlight, freedom in your eyes. Please don't leave now.
Operate his own microphone. A suit costs $400, and nobody knows what time it is, despite the clock that's literally built into the show. One man has the courage to stand up and say, it's in time, not on time.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and I just realized what I'm going to do here is I'm going to quickly change my mic out. There we go. That should sound a heck of a lot better. All right. Thank you all for joining us. This is In Time. We have a special episode that has, in one way or another, I think, been a long time coming. I think, yeah, this is where I get distracted by the live chat. Thank you, Oz. Thank you for that. Very helpful. I think we've talked a lot about psychology. We've talked about culture, in specifically and mostly, I think, in the U.S. But one of the things that we talk a lot about is compassion and trying to have understanding for other people. And it's a concept that I think is highly underrated. But I think these are qualities that everybody already knew existed in Fred Rogers, also known as Mr. Rogers, the Rogers neighborhood. But he was just an educator, right? He just taught children. Not really the case. In 1998, a managing editor at Esquire magazine got an idea for what he considered to be the ultimate troll. He was going to send an opinionated, brash, and unrelenting journalist, Tom, and I apologize, I think I've got the pronunciation wrong, Tom Junod. I'm going to go with Junod. I'll probably be corrected later in the show. A journalist who, quote, was determined to say the unsayable, and who had coyly outed Kevin Spacey in 1997 in a story entitled, quote, Kevin Spacey has a secret. He won the Tom Junod won the National Magazine Award for a 1995 article, The Rapist Says He's Sorry. And it was this editor's idea that it might be fun to have this man interview the nicest man in the world, Fred Rogers of the PBS show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Now, William Isler, a close friend of Rogers and CEO of the Fred Rogers Center and producer for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, having researched Mr. Janode and recognizing this for wrought with problems, and probably just an attempt to stir up controversy, objected to the interview and declined on Mr. Rogers' behalf. Mr. Rogers overrode him and, against his friend's advice, decided to do the interview anyway. What came next, nobody expected. Rather than a troll of Mr. Rogers came an interview which changed Janode's life. He later described it in The Atlantic, writing that, quote, a man of resourceful and relentless kindness saw something in me I did not see in myself. He trusted me when I thought I was untrustworthy and took an interest in me that went beyond my initial interest in him. He was the first person I ever wrote about who became my friend, and our friendship endured until he died. It was a complete mystery to me how he could be who he was and how he could stay who he was, Janode later said. It wasn't a pose, it wasn't an act. He titled that Esquire article, quote, "Can You Say Hero?" The article had such a profound effect on its author and the people who read it that it eventually became a movie with Tom Hanks playing Mr. Rogers. The movie, quote, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, premiered on September 7th, 2019, and was released in the U.S. November 22nd. Many people think it's a movie about Fred Rogers and his show, and ostensibly, perhaps, but it's not about his life. It's not about the influence that he's had, quite literally, on Western civilization. It's about the Esquire interview and the effect that Mr. Rogers had on Janode. Now, Janode has said that there's always been a bit of a misconception about Rogers. He's not like Superman. He's not otherworldly. He's like Batman. Didn't have any superpowers. Made himself a superhero. Janode said, quote, obviously, he has lessons to teach about kindness, but I think he also has lessons to teach about the attainment of kindness, and that kindness is a practice. He practiced it like a musical instrument, and I think he did scales every day. Tonight, we will look at the man Esquire magazine called a hero who changed the course of broadcasting in Canada and in the United States, and who shepherded so many young human beings into their adulthood. Now, my guest tonight is Marianne Ono, so let's bring her out here. And see Marianne, there you are. Marianne, how are you?
I'm well. I'm watching your YouTube feed, though, and I'm not on it, but that's okay. Folks, hi.
You're not, well, it does take a second or two. There is a lag, so
okay.
if you're watching it, you'll see it, and you'll see it.
That's fine, no worries.
Come up a second later.
Okay, cool.
Usually I'll get 20 DMs from people telling me, you're not live, if there's a problem, and to the best of my knowledge, I don't have any yet, so I think we're good.
Okay.
So now you have a personal interest in Mr. Rogers. Can you tell me a little bit about why this is so important?
Well, it's funny. I actually didn't watch him much as a kid. You know, in Canada, we have someone we call Mr. Dress Up, who wasn't, I got to tell you, not in Rogers' class at all, but he was mostly what was on TV. Every once in a while, I'd catch a bit of Rogers. I was a bit old for him. It seemed really simplistic, like nice, super nice guy, but, you know, there were more exciting things on. Oh, God, Knight Rider, and I'm not going to tell you what I used to watch. It was all very bad. But yeah, you know, I honestly don't remember when I started paying attention to him. It might have been when that Junod article was written. Well, no, I mean, I talked to a number of people over the years who would tell me stories about him, and I found him fascinating. But I mean, I'm old enough to remember the pre-internet days, and where did you go? Like, where would you find this stuff? So I just listened to the stories, and then when I came across that interview, was completely floored, and ever since then have been digging up what I can. I kind of, this is going to sound really, well, everything about Rogers sounds really cornball, and yet it's very genuine. So I'm not going to apologize for being cornball. Some people have these phrases, one of the ones Christians often use is, what would Jesus do? I kid you not. I often ask myself, what would Fred Rogers do in this situation? Like, especially when I'm getting really riled up and just wanting to take the piss out of somebody. And it really settles me down. It focuses me because of what I know about the man and because of what I know about what he was trying to achieve. Sometimes it'll help me kind of redirect my goals a bit and say, no, what I'm heading for here is not really what I should be heading for. So he's that much a fixture in my life that, I've got a mug. Whenever my husband's, he gave it to me. And he knows I'm fond of it, so he'll bring me coffee in my Mr. Rogers mug. You pour the hot coffee in, and it changes his suit to a sweater as if he's just started the show. God. Yeah. It's all very cornball, but it's fun. So yeah, he's been a pretty big influence on my life.
Okay, so thank you for helping me feel dated. Yeah, I remember when the TV guide was made out of paper. And it was this big thick thing, and you had to flip through, and oh dear Lord, you had to pay if you wanted to know what was going to be on television that night. So.
Oh well, if you really wanted to torture your sibling, you'd rip out the next day's page, right?
I never thought of that. Yeah. Well, that would cause me to suffer at least as much as, unless of course he kept the pay. Next time I need help, Next time I need help.
Next time you need help upsetting someone, yeah.
I'm gonna give you
And then I'll go, what would Fred Rogers do? No.
That's gonna take all the fun out of it.
And sink it all. By the way, I'm going to show everybody this just for fun. I have this. See, now I'm watching the slowed down footage here, but it'll come up eventually. I have this wicked-looking stainless steel clip that I'm putting back on one of my knuckles. And the reason I'm doing this is because whenever I talk about Rogers, I cry. I cry. And so I'm hoping that if I cause myself enough pain, the tears will be somewhat minimized. But I'm telling you all now, I will cry, and Rogers would have been okay with that. So you're just going to have to be okay with that. In the keeping with the theme of the show.
He would, and I think... So I actually wanted to ask you what most affected you in that article. Although I will say, what I found most fascinating was how it opened with there was a mother introducing Rogers to her boy, and he had a sword. Of course, is probably anti-Rogers,
yes.
And the sword was talking about how it was actually not a sword; it was a death ray. And then Rogers just whispered something into the boy's ear, and completely changed the boy's demeanor in just one whatever it was that he said, and the interviewer did ask what he had said, and so what do you want to say?
What did he say?
He had said.
Oh, you're going to let me talk?
No. This is the Nick Soutter show.
This is the Miles and Kim show, guys. We've known
Please.
Yeah, guys, we've known each other a long time. I needle him a lot, and vice versa. I think he's a little gentler. I can be rough. Anyway, I believe one time I was giving Nick here crap because Americans are so proud of having kicked the British to the curb, your revolution, and yet you are like the only country among the G20. I don't know how many countries in the world have adopted the metric system, but you are the one holdout among the major industrialized countries that still uses, of all things, the imperial system. So I took to calling him Miles, and he took to calling me Kim for kilometers, and if I call him Miles, that's what that's about.
That's what that's about. That is correct. All right, everyone thinks it's a code. It's like, no, it's a troll.
By the way, this is also a very Fred Rogers interview. He never stayed on topic. Whatever he wanted to talk about, he talked about. So, yeah. And
not only did he not stay on topic, but he actually started to interview the guy interviewing him, and then the guy had said, Oh, so,
yeah. Now I've always said Junod, but I don't know that that's any more accurate than yours. But Junod said that Rogers never answered a single one of his questions. The closest he would come is he'd say something like, well, they met more than once, right? And so he'd say something like, I've been thinking about that since you raised it last. I got to slow that down, like he'd be, I've been thinking about that since last you asked. Like, that's how he spoke. And what do you think, Tom? So, like, an absolute interviewer's nightmare.
Yeah. Well, and of course,
because he was so interested. Yeah, but he was just so interested in how people thought and talking about what he thought. I have seen interviews where he does that, but I think that he and Tom just had this kind of connection where he just, that was how he wanted to handle it. So, expect this interview to continue to go off the rails. Is what I'm saying,
there's going to be no rails for this. This is going to be just.
Yeah.
So, so what was your favorite part of? So you said that you think it probably started with this interview. What was your favorite part of the interview? Yeah.
Oh, do I say it? I think the part where Rogers gets stark naked. I was just, because you see those of us who've watched Rogers' show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he comes in and changes the jacket, puts on his sweater, but you never see anything below like a neckline or a cuff, right? Well, I guess he was like, if you want to spend the day with me and get to know me, we're going to do my routine. And his routine included swimming in a pool, and he always swam naked. And he warned Jonad about that. He said, this is what I plan to do. And by this point, I think Jonad was pretty much like, as they say in Watership Down, like Tharn in the headlights, right? And he was like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we're doing. And so, yeah, there was this like episode in the interview where Rogers is just completely buck. And I liked that. I mean, people talk about him as being a really open guy, but I mean, that's an open guy.
Yeah, that's no real barriers or boundaries there. And so, that's fine. Anybody can clip anything of this. So we just ask, and that they have a link to the original so that people can find it if they want to see the whole thing, especially if we're clipped out of context, which you can do. You can't
try
do to
to
me.
keep some context.
Well,
not just like the sentence that says, "I liked when he got naked." Like put some context around that, peoples.
I think that's perfect. And I actually have her husband's email address, so we will forward that clip to the appropriate.
He won't be surprised.
Yeah, well, actually, I've got his phone number too, so quite frankly, I could just put. All right, we have a super chat, $5 from Jake 4D. I used to be wrong and think that the metric system was better. Then I was shown how base 12 is far superior to the imperial. That was my argument. And then she just started calling me miles after that. And then she thought she had everything. I was like, well, you believe in the kilometer, right? So you're going to be Kim. So, yeah.
So here we are.
Yeah, he's got it. So thank you very much for that super chat. Yeah, base 12 all the way. We do it also to keep those shifty Canadians on their side of the border because they get all confused and then they go in circles and come.
Oh, since you mentioned that I'm Canadian, can I throw in a fun Rogers fact?
Please.
I am betting that nobody watching this right now knows this. If you do, kudos to you. Before Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, there was a very similar show, same puppets, he was the host, it was, same style with the kids, difficult topics, the whole thing, right? In black and white. What are you drawing in the air there? Okay, whatever. No, I'm seeing your lag. The whole thing here in Canada. So his first on-screen role was funded by the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and shot here in Canada. And he moved his family here for, I actually don't know how long. But they didn't shoot a ton of episodes, but it was called, and how's this for a bizarre name? It was called Mr. Rogers, all one word with only one R. So like Mr. Rogers.
That I did not know. I did not.
Look it up, people.
All right.
Look it up on Wikipedia. There it is.
Now, I do know. So he started in Canada, and then they were trying to make PBS here. As I understand it, PBS didn't actually exist in the United States, and they were looking for funding to get PBS. And they asked Mr. Rogers to testify before Congress on that one.
Yes. And we just watched that as a family. I was telling the kids that you and I were doing this show, and there's a documentary. This is not the Tom Hanks film. Okay, this predates that. There's Tom Hanks' film is called A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. The documentary, there's actually more than one, but this is amazing. This thing should have gotten an Oscar. Is called, not that I'm biased, is called, oh God, what's it called now? It's completely slipped my mind. I'm going to check. Anyway, in this, what the hell were you asking me about? Oh, the Congress thing. Yeah, so in the documentary, they show him speaking before Congress, and they might cut out a minute of it, but I mean, in total, it's under 5 minutes. And you can just watch the guy who all along has been taking everybody's testimony and yelling at them for reading their notes. And he starts off just not glaring, but looking kind of grim, right? And he's like, fine, go ahead, say your piece. And it is less than 5 minutes later, and he says, I think you just got the $20 million. Like, it is a speech.
And I heard that he also actually got the senator to cry on the Senate floor, if I understood that correctly.
You can see him tearing up, and you can see the progression because the camera keeps cutting back to him. And at first, he's got that grim sort of, oh God, what now? And it's a children's show, like, what is this crap? And then you can see him start to lean forward and like raise his eyebrows, and then you can start to see the tears form. And he actually says something like, I'm choking. No, he says, this is the first time in ages I've gotten goosebumps. And then he says, I think you just got the $20 million. So,
right, so
you guys, less than 5 minutes, watch it. And I do believe that we have, did I give you the clip for that?
I
don't think I did.
Clips. I can find clips on my own, Kim. I don't necessarily need your help. I have a little touch experience doing this. FYI.
Then my years of efforts with you have paid off.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so you're going to find a way to take credit. Yeah, no, I don't actually have the clip. No, I'm just kidding.
But you know what? You look up the words Rogers and Congress, boom, there it is on YouTube.
I've got a clip. Yeah. I've got it. So let's, what I'm actually going to do is I want to move it so that we can actually see the entire thing right here. And then.
Oh, we're going to watch it as part of this show? I mean, cool.
What did you think the clips were for? Did you?
Oh, I thought you were just going to link them.
No, thank you so much for giving me the clips. I sent them to all my friends because, it's like I figured, what I'm doing is everybody who's watching this show, we are going to send them a personalized autographed copy of this thing here. We're not actually going to air it because it's not like we're on YouTube or anything. Did she just tell me to shut up? Are you allowed to tell we need a ruling on that. And she's Canadian, which means everybody knows the rule about Canadians on this show, which is spectacular. There is you've had more influence on the show than you think. We have rules.
Notice what word I haven't said yet as a Canadian.
I have noticed that. I'm a little disappointed. In fact, I think you should apologize.
I am sorry that I'm not saying sorry nearly enough.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll all right, so let's...
okay, so you're running...
This is what I
Let's
give.
watch this thing.
I give an expression of care every day to each child to help him realize that he is unique. I end the program by saying, you've made this day a special day by just your being you. There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are. And I feel that if we in public television can only make it clear that feelings are mentionable and manageable, we will have done a great service for mental health.
I like how he frames that about mental health. And
yeah, for sure.
Well, and
yeah, when that's the...
Please.
No, go.
Oh, you go.
That's...
I can't interrupt you if you're not speaking.
After you.
No.
The agenda peeks its nasty little head over the horizon. Yeah, it's one of the things that we all miss about Rogers, I think, is that he had an agenda. Like, he was a genuinely nice guy. Everyone who ever worked with him, his wife, everyone who's ever known him has said the guy he was on screen is the guy he was. So I'm not saying he was being like surreptitious about this, but he certainly had an agenda in terms of what he wanted to communicate. And I think the part we miss is we stop at, I like you. And he said that in every show, as he just said in that clip, right? I like you for being you. I like you just the way you are. He had many ways of saying it. And that was very much the goal, that he wanted people to like themselves in their entirety. You know, not, I like myself, but I'm carrying extra weight, or I like myself, you know, he was a fat kid himself and was bullied for it. So, like, when I say that, I don't just mean, you know, middle-aged women kind of thing. He wanted people to like themselves in their entirety, but his expectation went beyond that. He wanted people to extend that to others. And the idea of liking everybody for who they are sounds really cornball, but it's very zen. It's very accepting everyone, and it's bloody hard. This is not simple stuff. Or I should say, this is deep stuff. One of the things he once said is, I prefer simple and deep to complex and shallow. So, you know, I think we stop at the, boy, you know, when you hear people say, when I watched the show, I felt really accepted and loved, and it got me through hard times. Okay. But the show was not simply about you as much as he always spoke like he was talking to one viewer. I like you, that kind of thing. But he very much had an agenda that he wanted this to be a whole life attitude and to build neighborhoods. And that's why it was Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and not, you know, Mr. Rogers, you know, happy fun time. So I just wanted to throw that in when we're talking, when you played that clip and he said, this is what I say to children. And he goes on to talk a bit about, I've now forgotten. I have too many of his quotes in my head. What did he say at the end there? Mental health.
Yes, mental health.
Yeah, but he's not talking about, he is talking about individual mental health, but he was very concerned about the mental health of the society as a whole. He did a commencement address, and you know what? This would be a great time to play it, Miles. You've got the clip, or you should. He did a commencement speech at Dartmouth College, which he attended, as far as I know, only briefly. I know he left after a year. I don't think he ever went back. In 2002, he did this speech. And right at the end of it, he explains what he meant when he said, it's you I like. And this is the part that I think we're missing.
All right, so I'm going to play that, and I also want to play a Zen part. Oh, we got lots of clips. But also, Sinister Porpoise, Super Chat, $2. Thank you, Sinister Porpoise. Thank you very much. Hexadecimal is greater than duodecimal by at least 4. Yeah.
Nerd humor, I love it.
Yeah. I told you you'd like our audience. I was not kidding. But yeah,
Awesome.
So I have a question. You just met Sinister, but does Sinister sound like somebody you might like?
Sure.
You like our audience?
Well,
the Sinister's our audience.
Weren't we just talking about I'm supposed to like everybody? Oh, Sinister is our audience today. Well, in that case, I love our entire audience.
Well, you're Sinister too.
Very
FYI,
excited by the audience.
Sinister's a solipsist. So,
we should chat.
You already did. All right. So let us play now the commencement. So this is Fred Rogers, O2 Dartmouth College commencement. I think it is. It's not playing. Let's see.
Privileged to be with you all.
A video. I don't
Since
know.
I've arrived here in Hanover, many people have greeted me by saying it's a beautiful.
This is
day
the
in
beginning.
this neighborhood.
This is the beginning. All right. So I want me to go to the last minute or two there.
Go to, well, I think it's about, I don't know how long the whole thing is. I think it's at about the 10-minute mark.
All right.
You know what? I closed the window. I had a window open that told me exactly when this started. I'm sorry.
No worries.
But I did give you the time. It's 9:06. How many seconds is that, people? See?
Okay. Oh, this is
Who gave you what you needed?
Wow.
This is how we get along. This is
me begrudgingly
Since I've
having to give you
arrived
credit
here in
for
Hanover,
things.
Many people have greeted me
for
by
crap,
saying
yeah.
it's a beautiful.
Okay,
day
so
in
we're
this
still at the
neighborhood.
beginning.
So you
And
know
it's a
what
great
this?
speech, but I don't think you want the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't, but for whatever reason, and I'm just curious, it looks like it's an MKV. Oh, right. I wish I had spotted that earlier. It's not going to let us scrub that, so we either play the whole thing, or
Oh no!
yeah, and I don't know. I can maybe
I wish I
try
knew how
a
to
different
play
technique.
it on my computer and you could all
What a
listen to him.
privilege to be
Oh,
with you
welcome, Sirius. Joe Sirius
Since
Mine
I've
is here.
arrived here and
So,
have
okay, well,
You know,
I'm going to
you know
take
what?
another
I'm going to
stab
find
at
the
that.
No, I'm going to find the
Okay.
transcript and read you the relevant bit. It's going to be faster.
While you do that,
There it
what I'm going
is.
to play.
No, I just
Go
I
for it.
just found it.
Go for it.
All right. All right. So he just before this, he does a song that goes, "It's you I like. It's not the things you wear." Oh, there's a pop-up window. There it is. Okay, it's not the way you do your hair. It's you I like. It goes on and on and on. Okay. And this is how he ends his speech. And what that ultimately means, of course, is that you don't ever have to do anything sensational for people to love you. When I say it's you I like, I'm talking about that part of you that knows that life is far more than anything you can ever see or hear or touch. That deep part of you that allows you to stand for those things without which humankind cannot survive. Love that conquers hate, peace that rises triumphant over war, and justice that proves more powerful than greed. So in all that you do, in all of your life, I wish you the strength and the grace to make those choices which will allow you, and here's the key, and your neighbor to become the best of whoever you are. So when I said he has an agenda, this is what I'm talking about. When he says it's you I like, it sounds so very simple, but as he said, he liked simple and deep. And the depth of that was, this is what humanity needs for us to like ourselves and each other.
I'm glad you're making the distinction between simple and easy, because those are the simplest things aren't always the easiest. And
he was not an easy man. He was in some ways, extremely challenging man. Kindly challenging. He was always very kind and sweet about it. But and you know what, you see that in the Tom Hanks movie. There's a lot of things I do not like about that movie. I think that's inevitable when you're a big fan of someone. And also when they fictionalize something that you like a lot. I adore that Tom Junod interview. I mean, you do have to post that link for people, because it's a glorious piece of writing. It's written in the same language that Rogers would use to speak to children. So it comes across as very simple, and yet it's very deep. Why do I keep losing the thread? Where were we going with this? Oh, that he was a difficult man.
Yeah.
Difficult in the sense that he felt incredibly strongly about certain things, and he was not going to be distracted by things that seemed irrelevant to him. So he cared about he wanted to know what other people cared about. He cared about that. But for example, if an interviewer is asking him what he considers to be questions that don't get to the heart of his work, he's going to turn that right around. And where I was going was, one thing I liked that they did capture well in the Tom Hanks movie is that he keeps creating these uncomfortable situations. And this is what I mean by difficult. Maybe I should have said he's uncomfortable. He would sit there in silence. Like a topic would come up, he might ask a question or make an observation, and then sit there. And an interviewer, the guy on the other side of the bench, so to speak, is trying to interview, and he's waiting for more. And there's just this silence. And there's a lot of that on Rogers' show. There was a lot of that in his life. Here's something else your audience probably doesn't know. I have so much weird trivia about Fred Rogers. Miles, do you remember? You've seen the show, right? Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Not a. I think I saw more of it than I realized I'd seen. But yes, I know. Yes, I have.
Okay. Do you remember that? Okay, so there's the living room he comes into, and then there's the kitchen where he goes and feeds his fish. And he did these things every day. But every episode, as he passes from the living room into the kitchen, he passes behind this pillar, kind of like a wall, that has a great big stoplight on it, like a traffic sign, right? And it's got the red, yellow, and blue, and it just flashes yellow. Do you have any recollection of this?
I do remember it, yes.
Okay. That represents slow down. So he had all of these like little things that were kind of, they weren't necessarily for the audience, or, I mean, kids might have picked up on it. I don't know if he ever referenced it. I haven't seen every one of his episodes. They're not all available to watch, as far as I know. But it was certainly a reminder to him and his crew that this was his philosophy, was to be slow and thoughtful. And so you'd get these long silences in interviews, and you'd get him sticking with questions that the rest of us would drop. So if you're chatting with somebody and you ask a question like, well, in the movie, the interviewer shows up, I think he's got a shiner. And so Rogers asks what happened to him, and you know, the interviewer kind of brushes it off, says something, and tries to keep going. And Rogers just keeps returning to it.
Well, the interviewer said he got hit in the face with an inside pitch, and
Okay.
Rogers refused to let that go. But he had an answer.
Yes.
Which was the interesting thing, which is he did give an answer, but Rogers didn't accept
Yes, but
it.
he didn't want. Yeah. Well, Rogers was incredibly intuitive. And you get that when you read the actual words of Tom Junod, who said, you know, that Rogers handled his interview differently than he handled some other ones or other conversations they have. He felt that Rogers was intentionally trying to put the interviewer in a position of feeling trusted. And you don't get that in the movie at all, right? So there's all these things that bug me. But he was incredibly intuitive, and Junod said he was feeling not very trustworthy at this point. And so that is what Fred honed in on. I don't know what he picked up on, but so he would hone in on these things, or hone in on an answer that just didn't feel right, didn't pass the sniff test, so to speak, and not let it go. The rest of us, if somebody, you know, even if you doubt what they're saying, so, you know, somebody's got what look like defensive wounds and they tell you they fell down the stairs, some of us might push, but if the person says, I really don't want to talk about that, I think most of us would drop it. Yeah. Rogers would not drop it, right? And he doesn't in the film, and he didn't in, well, it's a little different, the situation, but so many times in his life, he has refused to drop something to the point where he drove the people he worked with crazy because they had a schedule and they had things they needed to happen. And he was like, no, I'm going to do what I'm doing right now. It needs to be done. So, yeah, this is what I mean by he was difficult. I don't mean he was unpleasant, but he was not an easy man.
But I think also even his, so, you know, he seems to speak very simply and have actually rather simple ideas that are often very difficult. And you have to wonder how much opposition, I think it was Einstein who said that brilliant minds always suffer violent opposition from people with essentially with lesser minds. I've forgotten now the exact quote. And you have to wonder how many times somebody would see him and decide that they wanted to beat the joy out of him, beat the, you know, who are you to be this way? Who are you to be this happy with life? Which sounds terrible, but on the flip side, all of us have experienced that at some point. So you have to wonder how much he must have been the focal point, really, actually, of some significant level of venom and hatred.
Well, he certainly experienced bullying in his life. He talked about it. And I'm sure that a lot of it was about his weight. I've seen footage of him as a kid, and he was definitely a heavy kid, which is hard to believe because he ended up being such a pencil, right? But you know, kids tend to go beyond that. You know, there are heavy kids who get along fine with others and are popular because they just have something that people respond to. And I think he may have developed it. I know he cultivated it very carefully, the way he interacted with people, until it became his nature. It was, I got to be careful here, it was probably always his nature, but I'm saying he put great effort into practicing these skills. But I would imagine as a young kid being bullied, he talked about how he was afraid to go to school because he felt like he would seem stupid, you know, that because he didn't know as much as he should have. He obviously had some real hang-ups, and kids pick up on that stuff. So I hear what you're saying about people reacting just because he seems so nice, but I think he, even at the end of his life, he had some hang-ups. I gotta watch my language. Hang-ups is harsh. He had some doubts that he carried with him. Do you know what his last words were?
I don't.
This is going to sound really weird until I give you some context. You have to remember he graduated from seminary, okay? So there's often a religious bent to what he's saying. The last thing he said, but he died of stomach cancer in his early 70s. It was only about 2 years after his show ended. His wife lived on another 16 years or so. She just died earlier this year, I believe. But his wife was with him just before he slipped into his final coma. And the last thing he said, he asked a question. He asked his wife if he was a sheep. Now, a lot of us would read that meaning, am I a follower? And he was certainly not a follower. But she said that she understood what he meant because they had previously been talking about it. And I believe it's in, you know what? I'm not even going to guess. I can't remember what part of the Bible, but probably Revelations, because it talks about how in the final judgment, the end times, the sheep will be separated from the goats, and the sheep being those who were loyal and lived out their lives the way they were led, the way Jesus / God led them in the correct path, and the goats were those who hadn't. And make of that what you will. He was not someone who typically talked a lot about religion, certainly not on his show. So he didn't foist it on anyone, but it was a big part of his life. And his final question was to ask if he had been on the right path. So I think that gives you a sense of these were doubts that came up over and over again in his career. And because he's so open, we tend to think of open people as not being full of doubts, right? And so I really wanted to say that. I'm starting to tear up, so I'm putting my big ugly clip on.
Well, and then there's like now a whole host of questions in place I want to go, but I want to do 2 clips while we're talking about the sort of the Zen, and then I want to do another clip at some point soon about some insight that he had, I think probably maybe 50 years ahead of the rest of society as to what sort of our general ills were at the time. It really shocked me when I found this clip. But let's start with, what I'm going to start with here is, let's see. Okay, yeah, that's work. And I am as surprised as anyone.
Who's made a difference in your life? Oh, a lot of people. But a lot of people who have allowed me to have some silence. And I don't think we give that gift very much anymore. I'm very concerned that our society is much more interested in information than wonder, in noise rather than silence. We get so wrapped up in numbers in our society, and the most important thing is that we're able to be one-to-one, you and I, with each other at the moment. If we can be present to the moment with the person that we happen to be with at the moment, that's what's important.
Yeah,
another one.
That's very Rogers. Sorry, you had another one?
One other one's about 30 seconds. It's on the same.
Who's made a difference in your life?
Oh no, it's sorry, that was the shorter version.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that was basically along the lines of what you were saying about silence.
Yeah, silence was huge for him. And he actually had there was a spot on one of his episodes where he asked children if they wanted to see how long a minute was, and he set an egg timer, and they zoomed in on the egg timer, and it counted down a minute. And that is a long time to have silence and nothing but this. It wasn't even like, there was no like second hand or anything to watch. It was just ever so slowly inching down to 0, and there was your minute. So yeah, now I didn't give you the clip for this, but if people want to look it up, Miles, I'm curious if you've seen he received a Lifetime Achievement Award, I'm going to say from the Emmys.
Academy
Anyway,
Awards. He got the Lifetime Achievement Academy Award. Yes, I've seen
was
it.
it the Academy?
I thought I had it. I can't find it, but I know what you're talking about. So let me see if I can find it while you. Yeah.
Not well. I mean, you can. Maybe you should do this to your listeners and see if they tear up. Well, you won't know if they tear up. But folks, if he doesn't find the clip, it's easy enough to find. Look up, say, Rogers' Lifetime Achievement speech. So he accepts a Lifetime Achievement Award. I actually thought it was the Emmys, but you may be right. It's maybe the Academies. And instead of, going through the whole usual list of thank yous and trying to say something inspirational, he asks the audience to join him in, I'm going to guess here, a full minute? 1 minute?
It was 10 seconds.
Was it?
But it was 10 seconds, but it was still a long 10 seconds.
Sure did feel like a minute, didn't it? To join him, was it only 10? For anyway, a certain amount of time in silence, thinking of the people who had helped them get to where they are in life. And at first people giggle, like you can hear this sort of little titter rippling across the audience. And then people like quiet down and they can tell he's serious. And he says, I'll watch the time. And sure enough, he's got his watch. And he just stands there and watches his watch go around, and the camera pans the crowd, and the tears. Like, people are just, totally verklempt over this. I'm getting all teary now. And I think part of it is that we don't give ourselves that space, right? We might have a fleeting thought, oh, I'm so glad my parents taught me that, or I'm so glad, but we don't take the time to sit with it. And he was very into sitting with things. Now, I don't know where you want to go with this, but I would really love to bring in the nuclear disarmament bit.
I was going to do it at some point. We can certainly do it now. I've got loads.
Yes.
Loads. Let's do it.
Okay. I do have to also tell you folks that my husband is going to be quite displeased if we go past 10 o'clock on this computer, but I do have a laptop beside me, and I can try to make the shift from one to the other. We're going to see what happens.
Also call in on your
but
phone, but same link will work on your phone.
I guess I could borrow my kid's phone that we've confiscated for unfortunate reasons. Okay. Oh, nuclear disarmament. Okay. So, well, you know what? Before I get to that, I'm actually going to do the assassination one first. So, in the intro, there's this written, the look on your face is priceless. So Nick and I kind of together wrote the little blurb that goes under this video on YouTube. And it says, that Rogers dealt with difficult subjects like death and divorce. And that is true. He did, and he did it beautifully. He also, remember this is a show for kids. The age range was supposed to be 2.5 to 5.5. So basically preschoolers. Preschoolers and kindergartners. He also, in his very first year on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, not the Canadian show, he had an episode where one of the puppets so there's the section of the show where you see Rogers, and then there's the section where you go to the puppet world, and he calls it trolley let's go to the neighborhood of make-believe. And so the trolley goes there, and one of the animals, Daniel Tiger's kind of upset, and I don't know if, no, I didn't give you that clip. And this was shot just after Robert Kennedy died, and there was great, not so much in Canada, but certainly in the US, like great grieving, I understand, across your country. And Rogers felt that kids were being exposed to this and hearing the stories and being very frightened and confused, and often their imaginations would be even, more graphic than reality. So he decided to address it. So Charlie goes to the neighborhood, animals looking upset, and kind of out of the blue, it says to another character there, "Can I ask you a question? What does the word assassination mean?" And, if you're not used to Rogers, you're going, this is a show for whom? Right? And so the person, this the tiger's talking to, she answers it very kindly and says it's when a person is killed in a sort of a surprise way, which for a 2 to 3 year old is about as direct as you probably can be. But here's the thing, they don't get into it any further. The tiger just says, oh, well, I might want to talk about it another time. Which is that's kind of how kids deal with stuff, right? They get a bite of what they can handle and then drop it. So it was perfect for kids. It was the bite that they could handle, and then he let them sit with it. Which is why I want to get to, so that's kind of amazing as an example in his very first year of the show. I got to think somebody advised against that line. But anyway.
I have to believe there were people saying, don't do that. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, but it's quite lovely actually. It's just the person saying, "Have you been hearing that word a lot? Well, this is what it means." And the puppet's like, "Okay, maybe we'll talk about it later," which I thought was lovely. But then here's where we get into some weirdness, guys. Like, I mean, real weirdness. There is a series of 5 episodes that came out in, I think, 1983. So we're talking Cold War. It was a scary time. Russia was the enemy. Were they going to throw nukes at North America? Were we going to fire back? And of course, kids pick up on this stuff. Kids pick up on so much. This is how they learn language, is they're listening when we're not talking to them directly, right? So he decided that he had to address this because, again, who knows how kids are processing things. So Rogers does another stint in the neighborhood of make-believe with the puppets, where what happened. I know Nick here's got a clip that he can play, but I just want to give you the general idea. You've got a kid, so there's King Friday the 13th, and then he's got a son who's the prince, of course. The prince comes home from school and says, "We've been talking about war and bombs and so on." And the king has already been puzzling over something entirely different, which is he's wondering why a neighboring kingdom or realm has ordered a whole bunch of these weird parts from a manufacturer in this king's kingdom and never said why. And the king puts 2 and 2 together and says, oh, they're making bombs. I mean, why else would they not tell us what they're making? And this ends up being a story arc over 5 episodes where in this particular episode, Nick, I don't think you're going to end up playing enough of it for people to see the bit I'm about to mention. But the bit I'm going to mention is in this particular episode where you actually see the puppets manufacturing bombs. Like, this is wild, guys. And the king saying, if the other kingdom's making 1 million bombs, we're going to make 1,000,001. The very end of that chunk of the neighborhood of make-believe before the trolley goes back to the real world, the trolley goes into the tunnel and it fades to black, and you hear a voice of a puppet saying, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. And Rogers, leaves it there for that episode. He says a few words afterward about people seem really angry. What do you do when you're angry? And kind of builds on it. But for that storyline, we've got the kids watching the puppets making bombs, and then a character being really frightened by it all, and then the kids have to wait to the next day. These little kids, right? And I think what Rogers understood is that this is how kids process things. That it's been said that asking someone who's depressed if they're considering suicide is not going to make them, suddenly think of it and kill themselves. If people are already in a distressed state of mind, raising the subject is in some ways reassuring, saying, I can understand what you're thinking about. And for kids to hear that is the piece of information that they got that day, right? Scary situation, a lot like the one you're worried about. And then the next day it would move forward. The next day they got into gas masks and air raid shelters. This is wild. In terms of today, what we feed kids, it seems bizarre.
You probably couldn't even do that today, to be quite honest. If you tried to have a kids show that had that, it would probably be canceled. The whole cancel culture. You get a million parents.
maybe for like 10-year-olds you could pull it off, but for like 3-year-olds, what we do get today, and I've watched enough Dora the Explorer and Animal Mechanicals and all kinds of stuff with my own kids who are now teenagers, that I think I have a pretty good grasp on your average show. And your average kids show has a conflict arise or something frightening happens, and by the end of the episode, it's all neatly wrapped up. So if there's a misunderstanding, at the end of that episode, everybody's like cleared the air and it's fixed. And not only does that not give kids enough time to process, but it also teaches them that what's normal, because we're creating a standard for them, right? The standard we're setting is that things don't stay bad for long. So what does a kid do with that when things do stay bad for long?
Well,
right? How much more of a panic are they in?
And that every solution has an immediate, every problem has an immediate solution, which is just simply not life. That is not life.
Within a half an hour, right? Yeah. Within a half an hour, the worst things end up, unless they're watching a show that's kind of designed for all ages, and then sometimes there will be that arc over a couple episodes. But even so, you'll start seeing like there's some kind of comforting going on. And Rogers doesn't go there. And again, this is kind of him being, the word I used was difficult, but maybe challenging. He's challenging that idea that, in the era when he started, kids were only told kids should be seen and not heard in a lot of circles, right? Kids were generally only told what people thought kids could handle, and he was very clear. Kids' emotions are as strong as anyone's, and their fears are as powerful as anyone's. And we do them no favors by trying to be simplistic. He used simple words, but he was never simplistic.
Well, let's do this.
So I don't know. Did you want play it?
It's about 7 minutes, and since you need to go, so here's what I think we should do. Maybe have you try to come in, same link on your phone if you can. Safari doesn't handle it well, but if you have any issues, DM me, and there are other ways to get you into the show. This is the easiest, but it's not the only. We can also have you Skype in, but at any rate, this has 7 minutes to play, so if you want to start to switch over.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, so I will say this.
Which browser did you say it doesn't like?
You usually have to normally have to email someone the link, and they have to manually put it into Chrome if you're on an Apple device. And I've got the link. I'm working on it. Yeah. You go ahead. Believe it or not, it actually has to come in via email. Try it without it. But what we've discovered is it actually, if it's an Apple device and you come in on email, click from the email. It works. If you do it any other way, it does. I don't know. I didn't invent this system. But I will say this.
Okay,
yeah,
so I'm clicking join call. You play your video. Let's see what happens here.
All right. Yeah, you may want to disconnect your thing first, but I do hear you're definitely hitting a ping. So let me we'll play this, and this is the part of they're starting to make bombs in the land of make believe, and this is where they're going to end up having to talk about bombs, gas masks, and all of the other things. This is only a short clip of it, and let's see what. In time, which means we don't have the.
I wish I could solve this problem.
Well, where did it come from?
Mr. Peshley is making these for people in Southwood. It's just a part of something.
Has Southwood ever had a war?
I think they did once, long, long ago.
Well, then they know how.
Yes, I guess they do know how.
To build bombs and make bullets and make all kinds of bad stuff to hurt people.
Oh, Tuesday, I don't think a little part like this could ever be a part of a bomb or
Never
anything like that.
know.
That's right. This could be the part of a bomb or something very
Careful, Trolley. Daddy has a pretend bomb.
interesting.
Oh, it's just pretend, Trolley.
But you never know. There are other ways to solve a problem. That's for sure. What do you think that little part was for? Just because the prince had been thinking so much about war and bombs and things, that may be why he could see all that in that little part. We'll make believe more about that next time. Right now, I have an idea for a game.
All right, and then let's see if let's see. So we had a problem on this show. We had Marianne telling me to shut up in my own show. She comes in, starts telling me all this stuff. Took me an hour to solve it, but she's gone now. You see, we can solve a problem in an hour. Don't anyone tell her I said any of that. All right, so we're gonna see. I'm gonna double check on just trying to get her in. So she's just changing over to a different system to come back. And what I can do is, and I think I probably do have, in fact, a message from her. Nope, that's the other. All right, I won't worry about that. All right, so haven't heard from her. It says she's there. So let me just double check. I didn't hear the connection, but you know what? I could be getting. Let's see if I can figure out. All right. Well, we're trying to sort out where is in the show. It says she's connected, but I'm not seeing it. I did want to play one other clip. She's gonna miss this one, but it was one that I really liked a lot. So let me see if I can. So I'm gonna play one because one of the other things that I had thought that he had gotten. That I found very interesting was we're going to play, let's see, let's find, we're going to play this, and it's a very short clip, but while that's playing, I will see if I can identify where in the stream is Marianne Ono.
Because if somebody's always saying to a child, you're going to grow up and you're going to be fine. So much of that in this country anyway, that a child is appreciated for what he will be, not for what he is. He will be a great consumer someday. And so the quicker we can get them to grow up, and the quicker we can get them out of the nest so that they will go out and buy, set up their own home at 12 maybe, then the better.
All right. So she's having this is an interesting problem. This was identified. It's a unique problem to this software. You cannot Apple products have a hard time, and so she's asking for a new link. And so I'll either send her a new link, or actually perhaps the easiest way at this point is I will bring her in on Skype. So let me get my suspicion is. Hopefully she's watching the show, and so she'll these instructions the last second. So what I'm going to do right now, get her back in the show here, is I'm going to bring up Skype and then send her the address, because I basically never use Skype except for the show. So, and every time I open this up, I got like 20 messages from people like, hey, I want to do a show. It's like, oh, I got this from R on Raw 6 months ago. All right, so hopefully she can come in through Skype, and we will get her back in the show. In the meantime, we've had a number of super chats, which I sincerely appreciate, and I thank you all very much. I do think, some of this was going to have her talk more about the Mr. Rogers nude for the. Yeah, that was surprising. And if I forget, let's have everyone remind me to ask her the fish story. So what I'll also do is, while we're trying to get, my hope is that she can come in through Skype. If so, get her right back in there. Otherwise, I'll look through the live chat and see what everyone has to say right now. It's getting a little close to wrapping it up. I do want to finish. I think there's a few more things to cover here. I'm glad we got to MAD, the 80s, the mutually assured destruction, the idea that if we build enough nuclear weapons, nobody can afford to actually nobody can afford to actually go to war, and that was called mutually assured destruction or MAD. Welcome to the 80s. It was not all pastels and the whole. It was and not that we're actually necessarily all that far from it right now. Anyway, so give me one more minute, and I think what I'll do is I'm not getting anything from her on Skype. Id Center. Yeah. So I'll give her another minute, and if not, I mean, this is honestly my favorite kind of interview because I can actually just I get a screen capture of her, put her down there, and then I can say whatever I like, and she really can't do anything about it. The problem is she's probably going to watch the rest of the show, so yeah. Let me get all right. I'm gonna bring this. I'm gonna bring the Let me bring up the live chat for a minute. I was so busy trying to get her reconnected that I actually brought the live chat down. Let's see. Nope, this is not going to cooperate. So I still haven't. Okay. Oh, I think. Oh, yeah. There we go. All right. I think she's coming in now. Oh, all right. So we do have her on Skype. She's not connected back into the show yet. You guys may be able to hear her. I don't know. Let's see.
Hello?
Hey, how are you? Can you? Okay, I don't know.
Hello?
You don't see me yet? Just on one. Gotta finish getting. This process does take a little while long. Oh, and she's trying to figure out why. NDI.
Miles, can you hear me?
No. And all right, she should be up now, and I'm going to get her audio through. So then all that's going to take is let's just make sure that there we go. So. All right. You guys may not be able to see her yet, but she actually should be in the show. Marianne, can you hear me? All right. She doesn't have audio yet. I'm not sure why that is. Audio. Oh, that is all right. Yeah, there. She's pinging me because she wants to know why I'm ignoring her. Which, trust me, it's normally not this easy to ignore her. Normally, it takes a great deal of effort. All right, well, we can see her in the show, but for whatever reason, she does not appear to be getting the show back. So I'm gonna take one more. I don't think she can see us. I don't think she's aware she's live. So let me one more time. No. Oh. Okay, let's. Oh, yep. Okay, the audio is definitely wrong there. So, okay, that should clear up the audio. So she should be able to hear me now. And then I'm going to.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can. We've actually been able to hear you. Sorry, but for some reason the audio to you was incorrectly configured. But you're in the show. You're live. We're back.
So after all that, since I didn't have Skype installed, my husband kind of threw up his hands and said, "It's okay, go ahead, use my computer." So here I am, back on your computer. After all that, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Are we actually live here?
Yes, yep, we're live. We're still live. And
okay, hi everyone. I'm so sorry.
Don't. We've had crazier things happen. Listen, I'm the one producing this show, so trust me when I tell you, we've had crazier things happen.
Say no more.
You agreed to that, Wade.
Say no more that when you're managing something, crazy things happen? Okay. I fully agree. Okay. So here we are. So you just played the bit.
Yes. Go on.
You played the bombs. And then did you play something else while I was running around?
Yes. We played you saying that you liked seeing them naked. I'm sorry. No.
You can't. You can't play that too much, really.
No. Well, I have a feeling we have trolls. We have trolls. But no, I played.
Welcome, trolls.
Tell you what. You know what? I think we can actually play this one again.
Because if somebody's always saying to a child, "You're going to grow up,"
this isn't the stuff I sent you. I don't know what you're doing, man.
No, but this was I sent this one because he starts talking about consumerism and about since all children and being viewed as, and this is 50 years before I first heard people starting to talk about consumerism and what it means to be. It's the other thing one of the things that I think about Mr. Rogers was that he saw individuals as people, not their age. And so while he understood that you communicate with people of different ages differently, perhaps, he still always saw them as a complete individual already. And,
yes.
I think
which was weird at the time.
I think it's pretty weird for today, too, quite frankly. And it's a concept, because I've taught high school, as you know, and it was a concept I actually have also talked about in high school and get a lot of pushback from there. Like, these aren't just little adults. It's just like, I'm not saying they're just little adults, but
they're different, but they're not less. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they have all the same needs, right? I mean, a 3-year-old still has the same need for ego, really, the same need to be validated. They just need validation in different ways. It's our needs don't change. It's how we fill those needs that seem to change with age, and what gives us peace and happiness as we are older is very different than what gave us peace and happiness at 3, 4, and 5. But nonetheless, we have that need, and it hasn't abated. So, all right. So this is this is one of my favorite clips, and so I'm going to play this for you now.
Because if somebody's always saying to a child, "You're going to grow up and you're going to be fine," so much of that in this country, anyway. You know that a child is appreciated for what he will be, not for what he is.
Miles, I can't hear it. I don't know if anyone else can hear it.
Consumer someday.
All right.
And so the quicker we can get them to grow up, and the quicker we can get them out of the nest so that they will.
Yeah, they'll be able to hear it, but also, so normally, so you are coming in on a different system. It is called NDI.
That's fine. It's fine. You don't have to explain. I just wanted to let you know.
I'm explaining for the audience, so that, and I'm also playing for time while I try to fix the problem. So coming in on this system just takes an extra step to it's a great system, but it takes an extra step to get done. And I, especially with the audio, and I failed to do it because we were just getting it in quickly. So that's an easy enough thing to fix. In fact, I think that should be the extra step. Let's try playing it one more time because I think it's a worthwhile clip. Let's try one more time. Let me know if you don't hear this.
Because if somebody's always saying,
I hear it.
"You're going to grow up and you're going to be fine," so much of that in this country, anyway. You know that a child is appreciated for what he will be, not for what he is. He will be a great consumer someday. And so the quicker we can get them to grow up, and the quicker we can get them out of the nest so that they will go out and buy, set up their own home at 12 maybe, then the better.
Anyways, I thought that was well before his time. And that was an amazing.
But you know what? If we're talking about Rogers' time, you got to kind of back it up and talk about his parents and grandparents' time, because his middle name, in fact, his full name, is, other than the Rogers, is the name of his grandfather. Why can't I say this? Grandfather. So his grandfather was Fred McFeely, and the Mr. Rogers we all know is Fred McFeely Rogers. And Fred McFeely, the grandfather, is the source of that incredibly famous saying, right? Which is of all. Well, there's one more famous, and I'm annoyed about that one. We can get into that, but top 3 anyway is how he would close the show, and we heard this in that clip before Congress where he says, he says, "I like you just the way you are," but he often said, "You've made this day special just by being who you are, or just by being you. That came from his grandfather. So if we're talking about Fred Rogers' time, you got to back that up 2 more generations. And there was a grandfather who was teaching him that. A lot of what Fred says and does comes from his family. And I think it's important to mention that because people talk about him like he's some kind of like bizarre phenomenon that popped up out of nowhere and we shall never see his like again. I think he would find that upsetting. Partly because his hope was to share what he had learned from his family in a way that would encourage others to have the same kind of approach of wonder and interest and genuinely liking and loving other people for who they were, with all their faults. He wasn't trying to be unique. He didn't want to be unique. He wanted to share what he had, and he wanted it to change the world, right? He talks about changing the whole nation after Robert Kennedy's death by sharing difficult things and just the way his family would share difficult things. His mother would talk with him and not talk to him, as was very, very common in that generation, right? But talk with him, and he got a lot of it from her. So we're talking, and who knows how far back this goes in that family. But I think we make a mistake when we see him as being this sort of like encapsulated special individual. Special in the way we all can be special is more appropriate.
I had a clip, and I have been unable to locate it, which is a
well, you're playing the clip right now of Officer Clemens putting his feet in the kiddie pool.
Yep, and there was an interview with Clemens many years later about this and about the first time that he was talking with Mr. Rogers about the significance of this, and where Mr. Rogers had said that he loved him just the way that he was, and he was just like, nobody had ever told him that, and especially for who he was as a black man, and especially in the U.S. at that time. So what was the significance of this? And a gay man, which is so what was the significance of this?
The significance of this is that at the time, well, let me relate this to what's happening today, and not in a race sense, but when my kids were a little younger and I took them to swimming lessons, every once in a while the lessons were canceled because someone had fouled the pool. Some kid had pooped in the pool. And they would drain the whole thing and clean it all out and refill it, and all the lessons were canceled, right? Well, unfortunately, at the time that this episode was shot, black people were being treated as befouling a pool in that sense, so that it was considered inappropriate, like just tainting the white folks to be swimming in a pool that either had black folks swimming with them or who had previously swum in it, right, if it hadn't been drained and cleaned out. There's I find really shocking footage in that documentary I mentioned. The documentary, I didn't remember the name before, it's Won't You Be My Neighbor? So there's some footage in there of black and white people swimming together in a pool, and someone who's extremely agitated running around the outside of the pool dumping in pool cleaner. And I don't mean like enough to clean the pool. I mean like trying to chemically burn the people in the pool, dumping in vast amounts of pool cleaner because they're so angry that these black people are daring to swim with the white people and befouling the whole experience. So Roger's response when he heard about this was classically him. He said, "That's ridiculous. If you have never seen footage of Rogers angry, it is something to behold." Like when he's angry, like the same way he doesn't hold back when he's happy and you just see that joy pouring out, when he is angry, it is frightening. And I saw him angry about a different issue, but I can imagine on this one he was furious and said, "That's ridiculous, and this is what we're going to do." He had already made a black man a police officer, which at that time was a bit odd enough, right? And then he had them just bathing their feet in the pool, and he would rather show or do, I should say, he'd rather do than tell. So he didn't tell about why this was important. He just made it, here's my buddy, we're going to bathe our feet together. And he ended up drying his feet, which in his theology as a Christian is showing it's an act of service. It's a form of humility to say, I am not better than you. And I love you. It's kind of both, right? And so that was very much the theme here is, I am not better than this man, and I love this man.
So, but now it's interesting. Now you had mentioned this to me earlier. So what did he? What was the significance that he was gay? Did that end up coming up in any way?
It certainly did. So Clemens, I don't know that Clemens wanted to build that into the storyline, but he did say, if we're being ourselves on the show, I'm a gay man. I don't know what word he would have used in that era, in Pittsburgh. And Rogers said, no, we're not making that part of our show. Clemens has been pretty clear in interviews afterwards that he didn't feel that he was being judged for being gay, but Rogers was saying, I'm making a point here, you are our neighbor who is black and a police officer, and we'll build on that, but we're not going to confuse people by bringing in a whole other issue. I think you could question, he didn't mind having multiple things for kids to think about in other areas. I think there may have been some discomfort there. I think he may have been influenced by the fact that, he didn't own the station. He didn't own PBS. He often pushed back and did things his way, but this may have been just too much in his mind to push back on. So I honestly, Clemens has been very clear that he never got the sense that Rogers had any problem with him being gay at all. But he certainly made it very clear he was not going to raise that on his show.
Oh, so that was maybe a bridge too far.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it also, it may have been the right call. I don't know. He read people very, very well.
I wanted to ask you about one more thing, and I want to ask if there's anything in your view that we've missed that you really wanted to make sure that we talked about. But you had mentioned the fish tank earlier, and that he would go through the light, the yellow blinking light, to feed the fish.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. So, and you had told me a story about that, and I was hoping you could refresh my memory on the fish story.
Just why he fed his fish in every episode?
Not
Do you mean? Is that
not why he fed his fish, but he used to not say he was feeding his fish, and then one day he started.
Yes. There's actually a couple of versions of this. I'm not sure which is entirely accurate, but the story goes that he used to get a ton of fan mail. He answered it all, and often got into long correspondences with people. I don't know how he found the time in his life. He also, composed and wrote and acted and yada, yada, yada. But yes, he got a letter from a little girl who was worried about the fish, and said that whenever he said he was feeding them, she felt better. I've heard it said that, she was visually impaired, and that's the reason why it may have been that she just needed to hear. Some kids respond better to hearing things. But yeah, and after that, every episode, and he did thousands of episodes, he made sure to state that he was feeding the fish very, very casually as he went by. So, it's nice that he was just always so very conscious of really every little thing he did. It was sometimes, I think a lot of us would find it almost pathological. Like he was a bit obsessed about keeping his weight at exactly 143 pounds. Because, now see, this is really bizarre, but that one would, it's neat that the number 143 is the number of digits in each of the three words, I love you. That's cool. But, it's kind of a whole other level to commit to staying at that weight for your entire life, as a sort of reminder to yourself and a sense that, you're on the right path. So he could be kind of odd.
Well, and on one level, I think it could also be said that he seems to me that he was an extremist. And,
oh, yeah.
I think for me, struggling maybe a little bit with I know what extremism means. I always think of it as a bad thing. Is there too much compassion? Is there too much? It's certainly unique, and like I said, I think for me too, because we had said earlier, I don't think there would be PBS without him. I think, or if it had ever come, it would have come a lot later, because it seems like he was the one who broke the senator on actually having a PBS, and that has altered the course of this country.
The clip you saw did not show what's in the documentary I've mentioned a couple times, Won't You Be My Neighbor? But in that, you can see the senator like breaking down, his wall coming down. It's very clear that his whole view of what public television can do is changing as Rogers is speaking for all of like 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah, sorry. So where did you want to go with that?
Well, I wanted to know if there was anything else that you wanted to discuss, but before you did, there was just to make sure that we stay on appropriate topics. Not me, not my nicknames, not like you and I arguing because you're stubborn and wrong about just about everything. Not everything. You see, I've moved. My position has changed in life. I'm not wrong about everything.
You're edging towards rationality. That's a good sign.
edging. Yeah, that's well. I don't want to get too close to the cliff of rationality because that's just pull off and who knows what happens.
I thought people would. I knew I was going to slip up and call you Miles. I thought people would want to know. So, anyway, I
like the mystery. That's my street name. That's you just totally destroyed my street cred by like just like, oh, he's named after the imperial system of measurement.
Yeah, and okay. I use it every chance I get.
Yeah,
okay, so. There's, I'll bring up one more thing. I could bring up, 1,000 things, but you want to know what really burns me? I already talked about kind of dumbing him down, making his message all about sort of validating the individual. And I read you that chunk from his commencement address that said that so much more than that, and that he's trying to help people find ways to build neighborhood, right? And love each other as much as he loves them. Okay. We have also dumbed down an extremely popular phrase that he said a moment ago. I alluded to this and said it really burns me. You will see this all over. Well, I'm a heavy Twitter user. That's my platform of choice.
My condolences.
Yeah. I stir up a lot of shit on Twitter. I don't mean to.
Yeah, you're.
It's a cesspool, but something about me just sets people off. Because I for one thing, I refuse to get mad. But anyway, you will find this in everywhere though, newspaper articles all over the place, that he said, I won't do the full quote, but basically, when I was a boy, in scary times, my mother told me, look for the helpers. And he did say that, and it is lovely. And you know what? I have used that quote myself. The idea that as awful as things may be, there is always something good. And in fact, awful things sometimes bring out the best in people. That's all fine and dandy. But it is not what he would say to a child who was frightened. Not the first thing, okay? And you see him just over and over and over when he's dealing with fear. What you don't do is just say, okay, so the kid says, I'm scared of the monster in my closet. You don't say, oh, you know what? Here is your stuffed tiger who is super tough, and any monster would run from this tiger, and you're going to be fine. And, the kid might actually drop off to sleep and feel a little better. But the message you've given them is that when they have an emotion like fear or sadness, then the first thing to do is to find something that will negate it. Right? And we talked about him wanting to sit with things. So his first reaction to a kid who says, I'm frightened about something scary is not going to be, but look for the helpers, look for the people who are doing all the great stuff. Because that's steering them away from saying, the first thing he would say is, okay, tell me about that. Like, what's scary? Or what situation, what happened? And he'll get their story. He'll get how they're feeling. Usually the next thing he'll do is say, it is frightening when, or say, I feel frightened sometimes too. Okay? He does all of that work to kind of work in the space they're in. And then, yes, if the kid says, but everybody's bad, like there's nothing good here, then he might say something like, my mom said, look for the helpers. It can feel that way, that there's nothing good happening, but it's really wonderful sometimes to see what is happening. So it's a wonderful quote, but it gets thrown around as the solution. People saying there's a school shooting in the U.S. Or any kind of disastrous circumstance. People will post, that's awful, but you know what makes me feel better? And they post that. And I kind of cringe every time, because he would never have meant it to be used as an anesthetic. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that one actually steams me up a lot. It's a beautiful sentiment. It has value, but we dumb him down to the point where we want him to be convenient, right? We want all the things that he does, we want them to be easy and simple and sweet. And he sits with people, or sat with people in their pain and worked through that stuff, and it wasn't easy or simple. It may have been sweet, but I think when we strip all that out, I think we lose. Let's go back to the title of the episode. Let's tie it all up with a bow. We lose the magic, right? The magic of Fred Rogers. What really made him different? Platitudes to slap a Band-Aid on something, those were not Fred Rogers.
I think it's much more empowering to say that we're going to sit and you're going to deal with it than to say you're going to be rescued.
Yeah, or just think of the flowers. Yeah, no. I don't mean to slam that quote. I just need to say that. I think it's a lovely thing, and I've said it sometimes myself. We can't be stripping away context, because then we lose what was so amazing about the work he did.
All right. Well, I do think that is a marvelous note to end on. So, Marianne, thank you very much for joining us. I had a marvelous time. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Yeah. I had a great time. Thank you. And thank you, everyone who watched.
Absolutely. Thank you for the super chats and for the support, everybody. And the other thing is also, we do. This one's probably not going to get demonetized, but I have given up trying to guess what does it doesn't. When more than half our shows get demonetized, and the reason is, we try to talk about things openly and honestly, and that's a big no-no on YouTube. But when easy, if you've gotten this far in the show, one easy way to support is to just hit the like and subscribe, and hit the bell, and they measure that, and it helps us in the algorithm. If you do that, the algorithm is our god. But in the meantime, we have coming up this Friday, we're going to do just an after-show hang. It's just going to be a general hang. I think the number one topic that we're going to cover is the Jack Snyder cut worth it? But it's going to be 604 Atheist. We're going to have 604 Atheist, Christopher Mouty, myself. We're going to be streaming on all three channels simultaneously. I think it's going to be a blast. So we'll see how many people we can manage at the same time, but looking forward to that. And then next week, I think it's Tuesday, we're going to have on Anthony Navasco, and he's bringing someone else, and I apologize, I've forgotten the gentleman's name, but so two people from the School of Street Epistemology. Mouty and I are going to sit down, and we're going to have a conversation with them. I'm looking forward to that, learn a bit more about street epistemology, talk about what it does, what the goals are, and so that should be worthwhile. Anyways, thank you all very much for joining us.
Hey! Whoa!
Oh yes.
You're not going to mention that I will be back in 2 weeks from today?
And because we figure that she hasn't caused enough trouble, post-theism and Christian atheism, So now you will find Marianne on Twitter, Marianne Ono. Will actually.
That's not my handle anymore.
It isn't. So I'll put a link. I'll put a link to your Twitter so people can go find you. We strongly encourage people who are interested in open and honest debate to go troll her, and give her a really good hard time because she is absolutely worth it.
I don't get enough of that on Twitter.
Oh Jesus! I've never seen anyone upset people so much, and I see people who are deliberately
I really
trying.
do. I really do. But yes, I'd love to chat with you folks.
I do engage every now and then, mostly because I really want to try to understand the kind of people who you upset, and they think I'm white knighting for you, and half the time I'm like, no, I agree with you. She's got all these problems. I completely agree. You're right. She's wrong. But wow, that's not true. I agree with you. I agree with you usually 9 out of 10, but I'll find the one just to try to make the conversation. Say, oh no, you made a good point. Why are you ready to murder people? I'd really like to know. But if you want entertainment on, we'll put a link to her Twitter feed. But she will be back. I'm Christian atheist. We're going to be discussing Christian atheism, post-theism. That will be, I think it's exactly 2 weeks from today, and same time, and
same bat station.
Same bat station. So, and since Christian atheism is obviously an oxymoron, go down there and tell her what you think of that term. You're welcome.
By all means, yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. It's been lovely.
All right. And we will catch up with all of you later. Thank you again, and see you on Friday.